right, so let's get started with the session. So, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, depending on which time zone you're joining us from. And a warm welcome to each one of you. Thank you so much for taking your time to join this session. It's great to see you all here. Yeah. My name is Soumya, and I have a pleasure of hosting this very special masterclass where our speakers, Dr. Jeff Sutherland and Miss Lizzy Morris, will walk you through this session. And before I proceed, I would like to introduce our speakers first today. Dr. Jeff Sutherland is inventor and co-creator of Scrum and is a seasoned leader with a diverse background from US Air Force Top Gun to PhD from the University of Colorado Medical School. And he is the author of Scrum, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time. And Ms. Lizzy Morris, with over 2 decades of executive consulting, Lizzy Morris excels in driving measurable results in software development and project management, specializing in Scrum, Scrum at scale, and Agile portfolio management. She empowers teams. And yes, we have planned this special session to be engaging and fun. So keep sending in your comments and suggestions, and especially any questions that you have. So we will answer them for sure at the end of the session. And without any further ado, I would like to hand over the session to our speakers.
Hello, everybody. So nice to see you all here. And a Merry Christmas in advance and Happy New Year. So give you all of the holidays. I'm excited to be here to help you kind of think about Scrum in a new way. Because a lot of times there's a very traditional view that people have of Scrum of what they think it is, what they think it can do. And a lot of that's created by myths and things that they've never really personally experienced. So I thought it would be great in this Christmas season for us to come together and unwrap the gift of Scrum. And who better to help you unwrap it than the co-creator himself, Jeff Sutherland. So we're here today and we're going to be kind of looking at different pieces of it. And we're going to look at the whole Grinch side, right? So when I think about the Grinch, and I don't know if you've ever thought about it this way, but when you think about the Grinch is always kind of in the background there causing problems, right? It's like getting into things you wish they hadn't gotten into and just making a really big mess. But when we think about some of the practices and power that exist in Scrum, we don't have to worry then about the Grinch because we've got some things to shield us from the Grinch. We've got some things to help us to go, hold on. Smell. Can you smell that nasty smell right there? The Grinch is in the corner so that we can do things to enable our teams, our organizations, and our everyday life be that much better. So without further ado, I want to take you into some of that stuff. So let me give, you've heard about me, so I don't really want to dwell in on me anymore, but I want to talk to you about what our intentions are for today, okay? So let's go to that. I'm going to share with you a slide. Now, those of you who've had any experience with us will know we're not necessarily the biggest slide people in the world, but what we do want to make sure is that you've got a couple of things, just a pointer to let you understand what we're thinking about doing and how we're thinking about serving you this gift. So if you look at what our intentions are, right? Our intentions are to kind of spark your curiosity. Because if we can do that, even if you thought you knew, but now you'll go, let me think about that just a little bit more. That'll be a great thing. And if we can inspire you to transform yourselves, transform your area, transform your teams. And it doesn't mean like you're going to change every color on the wall and change everything that you do, but it could be one or two little adaptations you make to begin to catalyze a change that will keep happening. We want to stuff your stocking. So we haven't physically bought you stockings, but it's a virtual stocking, right? That we are going to be stocking with tips, right? So when you ask your questions, we'll give you some tips and things about what you can do. We are inviting you to join a community, right? The Scrum Inc. community, the Agile education community, to understand that when you come into this community, there's support, there's care to help you grow in all facets. Because we're talking about empowering you, we're talking about empowering your skills and helping you to always keep growing. and to create positive change, because you, as some people call themselves scrummers, right? But as agilists, there is this one thing you should always be taking with you, is that you want every impact and every time you interact with another human being to be something that's positive, to leave something behind that's of value, whether that's a great saying, a great tip, or even just a fabulous smile, to let somebody know you're right there with them. And constantly to be aware of the Grinches that are out there, right? To kind of develop that awareness of, ooh, are we having a Grinch moment? And ooh, did the Grinch possess our team member today? What can we do to get rid of the Grinch in the room so that we stay together, right? So those are some of the things. And then here are the outcomes we're hoping that you will have. If you can get some of these outcomes, you will be in such a better space, right? To understand that you have a positive community, to understand that you can start to think about using Scrum as part of your everyday life to roadmap your personal improvements. Because when you show up at work, yes, you're an employee, yes, you're a team member, but you're a human first. So if we can help you to do your humanity with more power, with more strength, then we're all the way there. Jeff, what would you add to this?
I was talking to the MBA students at the MIT Sloan Business School recently, and I said, you know, you are all working really hard. It's a very competitive environment. You're probably working 80 hours a week just trying to get your grades. But if you could deliver twice the value with half the work, you could get much better grades only working half as much time as all your classmates. You could take time off and have fun and get better grades. And I know that happens, you know, you'd probably be thinking, well, everybody else is working really hard. I'm taking half my time off. But why don't I do a little bit more? I'll come up with, you know, some really big project. I want to start a company that's going to change the world. You start thinking about doing things much better because you have all this free brain space. So this is, you know, the idea that Scrum is a gift that keeps on giving. This is what happens. It gives you the gift of what Professor Frisson, in my book, I talk a lot about neuroscience, and the latest model of the brain is called the free energy model of the brain. And if you as a person can deliver more effective results in every part of your life with a lot less work, then you have a whole bunch of free energy creative.
Now, all these wonderful sorry, Jeff. All this wonderful stuff that Jeff is like, he's unpacking for you already, right? We're going to go into in more depth, and he's going to sit with you a while and really take you into some of these concepts, the concepts of neuroscience that are hidden in the first principles of Scrum that most people don't know, right? They don't know there's this science behind what it is we're doing. So we're going to unpack it for you and understand. We may like want to just give you all of it at one time, but we know we're going to do it incrementally. So we're going to take the tape, we're going to take the ribbon, we're going to put it to one side and go, okay, let's go a little bit deeper on this. So here are some of the things that you're going to get. Now, the first thing we want to do before we go any further is we're going to launch just a kind of hello quiz, because we kind of want to know where you're coming from. You know, did you know us before today? And we want to understand if you knew a little bit about us, if you didn't know a little bit about us. So we're going to test our first quiz. So if you can launch the hello one, so we can kind of understand who's here and if they knew anything about Scrum before they even got here. So if you look into your chat window, any point now, there you go. Nope, this is not the one. Go back. You should have the one that's the hello one. Not this one. No, so take this one. Not quiz one.
This is retro.
Nope. You should have the one that was the hello one. Papa should have put it in there. Did she not put it in there? Is that not there?
It's not here.
Okay. All right. So if you just take this off the screen for me.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you this, put this in the chat. If you knew about Jeff Sutherland prior to being here today, can you put a 2 in the chat? If you knew prior to today about Jeff Sutherland, just put a 2 in the chat. Okay, great. All right, awesome. If you'd heard about me, put a 4. Or am I brand new? Okay. Hey, Courtney, let me ask you this. If you are currently helping an organization today with Scrum, using it in some capacity, could you put a 5? If you're currently helping an organization today with Scrum, put a 5 in the chat. Awesome. Okay. And how many people are currently involved in a transformation of some kind at work? Like they're talking about they're doing an agile transformation. So, you know, they're trying to scale and those kinds of things. Could you put me a 7 if you're currently involved in an organization that's transforming? Talking about doing it? Yeah, awesome. Okay. Great. That's excellent. Thank you all so much for that participation. Just kind of wanted to kind of get a view of who's in the room as we move forward. Now, I want to actually bring up, let you see this particular slide, and I'm just going back to it because there are these books here, and especially the first principle. I want to encourage you all to go out and get that. It is on Lean Hub. You will find it, Lean Hub. Go to Lean Hub and find First Principles. It will change your life. It's a great book that will take you into a whole nother realm of thinking when you're coming about Scrum, right? And also the field book guide, more stories, breaking down kind of, okay, today, what are some of the things that we're going to do? And of course, the standard that is out there, letting you know that you can do twice as much in half the time. So I want to make sure you get a hold of these books. Let them be part of your library. You can get all of them pretty much on audio, but it's always good to be the old fashioned and have a book that you can kind of highlight and scribble stuff on, put stickies on, right? So I just want to make sure I bring that to your attention. All right, excellent. Okay, so let's continue now. Now, you've heard, if you've seen any of my videos that I've kind of been putting out, talking about this whole warding off the Grinch, right? I told you we're going to talk about the Grinch. These are 4 areas here that I want to bring to your attention when we talk about warding off the Grinch, right? 4 areas. Isolated teams. And when we talk about isolated teams, don't you love the fact that we've got these things that kind of come up now with hand gestures, right? When we talk about isolated teams, the problem with isolated teams that we've got to be careful of. Just because we don't have teams around doesn't mean we want to have the teams be isolated, right? There's got to be a way to make people work together, because the Grinch likes to make people feel like they're by themselves and there's nobody out there caring, and there's not somebody they can lean into, right? Another thing you got to ward the Grinch off, right, is poor prioritization. If we don't know what we're going to do and we haven't prioritized a direction, guess what? Everybody's going with their own perception and their own thoughts. And that means we never really get any great outcomes. And there's the Grinch of complacency, right? And Jeff, will you talk to complacency, like kind of some of the problems we see when teams just become bleh?
Well, we could talk about neuroscience. We could talk about, one of the things that's built into Scrum is this collaborative environment that really taps the power of the human. And by simple things like making things visible, what is not done taps into a mechanism of the brain where people worry about stuff that's not done. And when everybody's worried about what's not done, they actually do something to get it done. So a Scrum Master can actually get a lot better performance from the team when the Scrum Master is constantly making visible things that are not done. And that is just one of about 7 major neuroscience effects that affect how that team performs. And if you work on each one of those, it's impossible for the team to be complacent, right? And I just mentioned one simple one, just making things visible so people not only know what's to be done, the prioritization, but they also know what is not finished, because that automatically generates energy in the brain to get stuff done.
So when we think about the Scrum framework, we can come to remember, one, we have got a backlog. We've got a sprint backlog. That sprint backlog shows us what a team's actually going to be working on now, right? It allows that visibility, that transparency. So when we think about that, and we think about now a sprint goal that we've got, that people are focusing on a sprint, bringing visible to everybody what it is we've all committed to do together, that can promote the things that Jeff is talking about, turns the brain on to go in the right direction. So if you want to fire up your team like you fire up an engine, it's important that you're utilizing these parts of the framework. Now, this concept of warding off the Grinch when it comes to perfection, I always like to say that Scrum took perfection off the table because we want continuous improvement. If it's perfect, we're never even going to look at it again, right? And what was perfect today will never be perfect for tomorrow, because everything is constantly moving. The world is constantly changing. So when we think about that concept of perfection, Jeff, what were you thinking when you kind of began to talk about continuous improvement? What was in the mind of that?
You know, we learned that from Toyota. There are no best practices. There's only practices that can be improved. And the way to improve it is to make it very clear, what is the goal and where are we now? And make that gap clear. When that gap is clear to the team, then that creates a kind of they feel uncomfortable, and they naturally want to close the gap between where they would like to be and where they are now. So it's only through facing the reality of now and understanding where you want to go that you create that window that creates the anxiety of, we need to do something now, okay? Again, it's all about the motivation of the team to drive towards a goal. And as Lizzy just said, the goal keeps moving. So as things change, business changes, products change, people change, goal keeps moving. But right now, today, we need to know, where would we like to be and where are we? And only when we understand that do we know how to close the gap. So we're always looking for that. And that is the primary principle that drives Toyota. Everybody's looking at that all the time. They're trained to look at it. They're trained to write reports about it. And that actually runs the company. The company is run off, what is the gap and what is the next thing we're going to do to try to close that gap. And
So
that gets back to this complacency issue, cutting through the complacency.
Right. That reminds me of every time you go to the train station in the UK and you hear mind the gap. Because if you don't know about that gap, you could slip, and we do not
That's
want
right.
to be mindful. So mind the gap, mind the gap, mind the gap is a continual announcement. So for all of you who are here today, I want you to type that in the chat, mind the gap. Type that in the chat, mind the gap. I want you to put that on your boards for yourselves with your teams. We're not focusing in now. We're doing it so we can mind the gap, so we can figure out what it is we're going to need to do to bridge that gap to get to what I like to call our next best move, right? What is the next best adaptation that we can do? So constantly mind the gap. Right? So that's now going to take on a whole new thing. If you don't say anything else, when you're with the team, like, whoa, mind the gap. We ain't clear on where we are right now. So, hey, we got some gaps. Mind the gap. I love that. Now, that brings me into thinking about the culture that exists, like kind of the power of the culture, right? And a lot of people don't realize that that is a gift. There's a culture that comes with Scrum. And I like to think of it as the ultimate gift, right? It's the star that you want on every Christmas tree, so to speak, that North Star of the culture, of how we feel, of how we operate together, of how we treat each other, right? So when I think about it in a kind of like a quick to summarize, I like to think that Scrum brings people, purpose, and value together. And when I think about people, purpose, and value, there's not just the value to the customer, the value to the organization, but the value to the individuals in the organization. Like, what am I getting from being here and being on this team? So there's two sides to that value: the human perspective of me and the perspective of my organization, the system. And when we look at Scrum Theory, which I put in this really nice, pretty box because I think it is this great, beautiful, golden thing that we are given. And we're going to spend a little time right now, and we're just going to kind of help you unwrap Scrum Theory, because so many people skip it. You go into all the other pieces and don't realize that this is the caveat, the heartbeat. You know, Scrum Theory is the heartbeat. It's the fact that we're being empirical, and we have these pillars of transparency, inspection, adaptation. And we have these 5 values for humans to come together around. Jeff, break down to everybody Scrum Theory and how it kind of evolved, and the power that you know is in it.
Well, I think about it as the first thing is, mind map. What is it? To discover that, people need to be open with each other about what's really going on. And one of the things we found was, or is obvious to everyone, is that if you don't respect people and listen to them, they will not tell you the truth, right? So you can't have openness without respect. The other aspect of that is that it takes courage to speak up and speak the truth and expose reality, which is sometimes not pretty. So respect and courage are fundamental to open up and see what needs to be done to get from where you are to where you want to be going. Only then do you get focus. And it's only then that the team will then commit together to go, because everybody sees. And when through that seeing, that focus, then people say, oh yeah, we need to do that all together. That's the commitment. And as I said, the gap is constantly changing. So you have to do that every day. You have to ask, okay, where are we now? Has the goal moved on us today? Sometimes it moves, right? And we need to inspect what's happened, where we are, and then we need to adapt. And this goes back into the whole neuroscience area. I mentioned Professor Friston's free energy model of the brain, which is now being built into AI. This is a mathematical model that's used to run AIs. So it's not a theory. It's actually a working model of a functioning AI. And the biggest problem is when you or the AI thinks something is going to happen and then something different happens, because then your model of what's going on is different than reality. And to change that model can be quite painful. Like if you fail to deliver anything in a sprint, then the management's upset, the team's depressed. Everybody has to do something different. It takes a lot of work to kind of reorganize and refocus. This is what Professor Friston calls the Bayesian surprise, because there's a cost of Bayesian surprise, and that is the biggest cost to slow down your team. So in Agile practices, we've always talked about minimizing the cost of change. That cost is the Bayesian surprise. It's based on the neuroscience of the human brain. And this transparency, inspection, and adaptation in short cycles minimizes the cost of the Bayesian surprise and allows teams not only to go fast, but to innovate really cool new products quickly. So all of these, kind of fundamental principles have a lot of science underneath them. And what I'm trying to communicate to Scrum Masters these days, if you understand a little bit of the science, you get much more effective at motivating teams and having them close the gap, right? They're going to mind the gap. And that means the next step is really important to close the gap between where you want to be and where you are. And it's not just a list of things to think about. These are just kind of a reminder list of the underlying physics and neuroscience that is driving team performance.
Let me ask the crowd, has this suddenly brought a surprise to you, learning that beyond Scrum, inside of this, has been sitting this science? If this is a shock to you that you really didn't realize it had so much science involved, put a 1 in the chat. If you didn't realize, oh my God, there's this much science behind this, put a 1 in the chat.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize my training is as a research scientist. I spent 20 years. I had tens of millions of dollars in grants from the National Cancer Institute. Everything I do is based on research, hard data. And so when it came to Scrum, I just took all the science principles, the research principles, the clinical trials that I ran, all of that kind of stuff. And I turned it loose on project management, right?
And here we have the evolution of how Scrum came about. So that transitions us real nicely into what I liked to call the Scrum-Mas story, right? Because so many people don't really know the story of how Scrum was birthed, right? And I'm interested. If I were to ask you, anybody now who's out there, and say to you, okay, tell me how Scrum came about. Could you answer? If you know you could answer how Scrum came about, put a 5. And if you're like, well, I think I don't know, put a 2. If you could answer where Scrum came about, put a 5. If you're like, oh, I've never really thought about it, I don't know, put 2 in the chat. Let's see. I'm interested. Yeah, we kind of that's pretty much kind of what I thought. Most people have never really thought about where did it come from, because everybody's kind of just caught up in, well, Scrum, right? You just do it. It's just it's this thing, but there's so much more. And this is why I wanted us to unwrap this with Jeff, so you could understand the story behind it, like the birth. How did this come about? Now, I've got a couple of back cue slides here, Jeff, that I'll pop up, because I want you to give us the Scrum-Mas story, right? So I want you all to kind of nestle in as if you're by a fire, right? And you've got chestnuts roasting. So let's put that in your mind, right? And we're going to go back to how Scrum came about. So let's begin the Scrum-Mas story. Jeff.
Okay, well, Scrum, we go back to, actually, for me, is the military background. I was a West Point cadet. From there, I went into the Air Force and became a fighter pilot, flew 100 missions over North Vietnam. And that is where I really learned about responding to change or following a plan. Because half of the people I flew with got shot down. You never do, when you took off that day, whether you were going to come back. And only those people who were able to respond to things quickly when things changed came back. From there, I went became a professor at the Air Force Academy and then a professor at a medical school, and had about $30 million of research grants to do massive computer modeling of the human cell. And this gave me a deep understanding of complex adaptive systems. So that middle picture in the bottom shows the work I did showing how does a cell evolve into a cancer cell? And is there a way to make it go back? There is, and evolve back into a normal cell, okay? So what are the pathways that make things happen the way they happen? And it turns out, to answer that question, you have to know about complex adaptive systems. And Scrum is based on complex adaptive systems theory. Now, I was pulled into industry out of the medical school by a big banking company. And they had all their problems were late. They were running 150 banks all over North America. All the projects were late. I told the CEO that the model they were using, every time there was a problem, there were more meetings, more reports, more managers involved. Every time there was a problem, things got later. And so we said, what should we do? I said, well, we can't do everything at once. So let's do what today we call Scrum at scale. Let's take one business unit and let's implement small teams, complex adaptive systems. Let's have a product owner come in at the beginning of the week with a backlog that's ordered by business value. And at the end of the week, everything will be done, and we'll measure it with a burn down chart. That was in 1983. And that business unit within 6 months was the most profitable business unit in the bank. So we had this prototype of something much better that really worked. And I was trying it out in other companies. But as I was working, even back as a fighter pilot, I got involved in Tibetan Buddhism. I was actually on R&R in Australia in 1967, Sydney. And I picked up a book on Tibetan Buddhism, and it really impacted me because I was in the middle of 100 missions over North Vietnam, and half of the people I flew with were getting killed. And so I really started thinking about a process which for me involved into not only study of Buddhism, but having initiations from many famous Tibetan Buddhist masters right about the time that Scrum was born. And the whole thing about Mahayana Buddhism is, how are you as a person going to make the world a better place? It's not about you, it's about making the world a better place.
I think a lot of people didn't realize that there is this baked in sense of spirituality, a higher cause, to call it a transcendence that is in the essence of what Scrum is. How are you going to make the world a better place? And Scrum is come now, and it's an instrument in order to help the world be a better place, much more than just software, right? Much more than just software. Can I have you all type that in the chat? Much more than just software. Type that in the chat. Much more than just software. See, a lot of people are still stuck, right? It's like you're stuck in the yesterdays and not moving to now. And there is a big gap. That's one of the gaps we've got to close. Is it's not just about software, right? It's much more than that. So we're here to inspire you to take this to change the world. What can you do to change the world? I want to go to the books, because it's how did these books come with all of this? Because you quote them and there's some huge, great things in them. Tell us, when did you pick up these books and they influence then your, I've got to change the world, the mission to change the world?
Okay, well, The Art of War, I certainly studied at West Point as well as On War. And The Art of War is important to doing agile transformations, because Sun Tzu was famous for winning without fighting the battle, right? And so if you're trying to transform an organization, you don't really want to have to fire everybody. But in order to be successful, typically at least a third of the people in an organization are not going to want to be agile. They're happy doing what they've been always done, right? So you're going to have to figure out a strategy that brings those people along, and that requires a very creative mind. So by studying Sun Tzu, you can build that creative mind you need. In the bank is where I started reading Miyamoto Musashi's book called The Book of Five Rings. He was the greatest swordsman in history ever, a Japanese swordsman. He won every battle. Every battle he fought was to the death. So to survive, he had to win every battle. And as he got older, he said, I'm going to write a book for business people, you know, for carpenters, for, you know, for people who train horses, for blacksmiths, for all the people in the village, the farmers, for everyone. I'm going to write a book showing them how you can win at whatever you do. And the way to win is have a model for addressing problems quickly that requires what he calls the long sword. He said, when I had people riding at me on horseback, I needed a long sword, but simultaneously people would be coming on the ground and I would need a short sword to fight close in. And we saw that constantly in the bank. We had a long-term strategy that we had to deliver these massive new systems, but every day there was some emergency that we had to fight. And unless the strategy we use for day-to-day impediment removal was not the same strategy that we use for long-term achievement of product goals, we would get confused and overwhelmed by the trivia. And so I use this to run technologies in banks. The On War book, and these books need to be in the mind of agile leaders. The On War book is really the basis of now what we call business systems theory. At MIT, they have a whole division of the business school that was built by a guy named Forrest, who invented systems theory in business. And the basic idea is that as soon as you start to do something, it has side effects. You know, it's obvious. The government makes a policy to do X, but then all these other things happen that make it impossible to achieve X. So unless you understand the system and you can cut through the problems, you never get to the goal, okay? So cutting through what in the military they call the fog of war. As soon as the first shot is fired, the plan is shattered. Leaders are killed, lots of smoke and dust, a lot of confusion. There are rumors and innuendos going around. Someone heard some rumor that they're going to lose. Everybody's afraid. You have to cut through all that to drive to the goal. And this is exactly what a product owner needs to do in a company. And the Scrum Master needs to help do is keep the people moving towards the goal, no matter what happens. And we can learn that from von Clausewitz. But the final book is actually the most important one today, and is the basis of most of our Scrum training today, is built around John Boyd's OODA loop. I was trained in that as a fighter pilot to first, observe what is going on. You need to get all the data. And then once you see clearly what's happening, you need to reorient yourself. This means redoing the backlog. All that plan and budget that you made for the year, if the business changes, you got to throw that out and come out with a new plan now. And if you can't do that today, every quarter, it doesn't matter how big a company you are, you're going to fail. You're going to crash and burn if you can't reorient based on new data coming in. Once you reorient, then you need to decide, and the speed of decision has been found in millions of projects to be the number one thing that makes projects successful. There is nothing more important than the speed of decision. So if decisions can be made within the hour, companies become tremendously successful. If it takes days, weeks, or months, most companies takes days, weeks, or months for the management to even know what's going on and make up their minds. That's why they crash and burn. That's why they have problems, right? The lack of ability to decide. And then once you decide, how fast you execute that decision. There's so many people today, I meet with them, they say, well, we have all these problems. We got this big company, things are slow. I say, how often does Amazon deliver a new product feature to market? 12 times a second. And you can't even deliver stuff every quarter. Where do you think you're going to be a year from now? You're going to be like Deutsche Bank in Germany, where Amazon came in and took away 100% of their consumer loan business in 1 week. That's what's going to happen to you. So if you don't understand John Boyd today, this is the basis of enterprise decision making. And the leading companies we work with now are using Boyd's ideas to drive the companies.
I love that. So we've got 4 books that almost kind of put a thinking frame in place to help you decide the concept of, but I love that all of these are setting you up to say you're going to win. So we're not going to fail. We're going to win. So it doesn't matter. Yes, we're going to get hit and oh my God, everything's going to change, but we're still going to win. I think that is
These are people that won 100% of the time.
That is just
and the business book about John Boyd is called Certain to Win. So as an Agile leader, Agile coach, Scrum Master, product owner, you want to be certain to win. And what Musashi says, you need to study hard and think big to be certain to win.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that by just sitting back and not really focusing.
Okay, so we got to grab this thought because I want this to be with everybody. If you leave with nothing else, I want you to put, we will win. Put that in the chat. We will win. Right? So your teams will win. Your organization will win. You in life will win. We will win. Right? Because that's what we're saying. We're giving you a gift that if you really will take this gift, and maybe you're going to have to go back and unpack it again, right? Like, well, I unwrapped it, but man, it's like washing dolls. There's more in here, right? There is more. It is a gift. This is why I say Scrum is a gift that keeps on giving. And when you attend workshops with us, we're able to really kind of unpack this. In this webinar, we're just kind of ripping stuff off and going, here, take a taste of this and have a look at this piece and have a look at this piece. But when you attend workshops, workshops under Agile education, because I really want to push that so you understand the difference. There are lots of places you can go and you can take classes with, but Agile education that has been started by Jeff is unpacking. It is giving you the power, all the power tools. These are the stuff that really makes it work. You're not going to hear that anywhere else. Nowhere else a trainer is going to get into that depth with you of understanding that you need to know before you leave class. We're giving you tools so you'll win. Leader, we're talking to you. You're supposed to have a winning attitude, and these concepts will help you to do that. Decision making.
Yeah. One of the things I found out about this, since my background is military, some people don't resonate with that. So I often talk in classes about a ballerina dancer, a prima ballerina. She is walking out on the stage and she needs the whole troupe to support her, right? Mm-hmm. But a bunch of those people don't want her to be the prima ballerina. They want to be the prima ballerina, right? So she's got to be really strategic. She has to have the mind of Sun Tzu to have the whole troupe supporting her. As soon as she steps onto the stage, bad things can happen. You know, she could slip. There's a funny smell or noise or stuff going on in the audience that distract her. She's got have a way of dealing with these small disruptions while she's executing this great plan to do the Christmas dance, right? And in order to do it, she needs to cut through all the distractions that are going on, both from the audience, physical environment. She probably has some injuries as a ballerina dancer. You get a lot of injuries. How does she carefully maneuver so that a weak leg or something does not disrupt the performance? And as she's moving, she's constantly executing that Boyd OODA loop. What is going on? Where do I need to be right now? As I'm flying through the air, maybe I need to decide to move that way to avoid hitting someone else or landing on the wrong foot. I mean, a ballerina is executing what I'm talking about every second. And I think the message to Agile leaders is a lot of Agile leaders say, oh, we have this great thing called Scrum, and it's going to be easy. No, it is not easy because many things conspire to make you unsuccessful. You know, for the ballerina, the audience, it's the floor, it's the lights, it's the sound, it's the leg that's sore, it's the other people in the troupe that are not in the right place. All those things are conspiring every second to make her unsuccessful. So to be certain to win, you have to be executing what we're talking about here, right? It requires deep thinking, extreme focus, and everybody every day getting up and say, today is going to be better than yesterday. You know, I'm going to win bigger today than I won yesterday.
Yeah, taking that. I'm going to win bigger today. Yeah, yesterday, but I'm going to win bigger today. There's always this point, which, you know, kind of brings me right back here to Scrum Theory of, okay, I'm looking, here's the transparency. This is what it is. I'm inspecting based on the data I've got, and I'm going to make that next best move. Right. So all of these thinking all come to bring us to a place where no matter what, you're going to make your next best move. And that's what's going to be brilliant, because you have the ability and you have the power to be able to do that. I want to take you to the first principles, because I think there's just kinds of sets it up really, really, really well. These first principles that are driving this stuff and just, you know, kind of set you loose to kind of break this apart. Then before you begin, Let me ask you, the audience, when you're thinking about the ballerina, you can think about the ballerina even as yourself, right? You're constantly going out every day with the aim to do something better, with the aim to make your life better, right? But how has it been going? We're letting you know that even here in life, you can make your next best move, taking these concepts. There are always going to be forces moving against you, always, because we never get perfection gifted to us, not even from the universe. So what do? We take in deep thinking, begin to think about, okay, here is where it is. Here is what I've done. Let me analyze all this stuff, but let me make a move. Don't get frozen. If you get frozen, it'll be like ice, right? And you'll become one of the dinosaurs who weren't able to evolve. You can't get frozen. You've got to make that next best move. And Scrum is here to help you make the next best move. And that's why we come back to these first principles. Jeff, take us through the first principles.
Well, let's start with the fundamental attribution error. We could spend an hour on that. Okay, this comes from trying to build robots that work like people. And what they found is that if something went wrong, the robot would assume most of the time that some person was the problem, where actually most of the time it's the system that's a problem. So that this is kind of a defect built into the human brain, is that we blame things on people when usually the system is set up so that people can't do anything else than what they're doing. So Scrum Masters know they always need to look at an impediment. What is in the system that's causing things to break down? And we have today on social media, we have so many people whining, complaining, blaming. I mean, the fundamental attribution error is basically 90% of what's on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. All these people are actually lowering their energy, increasing their stress, making themselves less effective as people by whining, complaining, and blaming. That's the fundamental attribution error, and it is a defect of the way the human brain works. So one of the first things we need to do is overcome that. And thanks to the robot guys, because they couldn't get a robot to work unless they fixed it, right? So you personally need to fix it yourself to make yourself more successful, make you more successful in your organization. Now, in my book, I went back to physics because my training is as a radiation physics person. I was a professor of radiology for a decade or more. And so I knew all the quantum physics that we use to calculate the energy for an accelerator to treat a tumor in a cancer patient, right? Well, it turns out that all those energy principles are actually at the bottom of Scrum. and there's many of them, but I'll just mention a high level one. In Newtonian physics, which is not even quantum physics, we all know that force equals mass times acceleration. In an agile transformation, if you want to accelerate an organization, if it has a lot of mass, you need a lot of force, right? So you, as an agile leader at whatever level, you need a lot of energy because the force is how much power you can apply. And if you go through the Newtonian equations, what you need, you need twice the energy with half the stress, so they have 4 times the power to generate the force to transform an organization. The beauty of this is you can actually measure it 24/7 on your watch. I have a watch here. I know exactly what my energy level is. Right now, it's 80%. I'm running at 80% right now of my energy. Almost at the beginning of the day, it's noon. I'm still at 80%. And my stress is down below 20%, where most people, when they're sleeping, can't get down below 20%. So if I have energy at 80 and stress at less than 20, I have 4 times the energy to get stuff done. Can you feel the power that I'm feeling right now? And then I can see on my watch. This is all based on physics.
It's all real. This is all real. It's not just some theory on some shelf. This is real stuff
Yeah.
that can be brought into every day, right? You're
Yeah.
living it every
I'm
single.
starting to say to my Scrum teams, let's have a retrospective where everybody shows me your watch. I don't care about anything else. If your energy is low and your stress is high, that is a huge problem for the team. We're ineffective. We can't get stuff done. That's an impediment. And so now we're going to need to drill down and figure out how we make your watch show 80% energy, less than 20% stress all day long, even when you're intensively working, right? Because that is the way to live. That's exciting. You wake up every day jumping out of bed when you're in that mode. Do you want me to go through any more of these?
You know, I want to go right to the gift of personal empowerment, right? You know, I'm like, I want to talk about the gift of personal empowerment. But I'm going to pull myself back just a little bit, right? And I'm going to ask you to like give a 2-minute synapses on the other ones so that people are like, okay, I remember what he said about this and I remember this. Okay, I can take. So give us 2 minutes on each of the other ones. The kind of like, you know, waves and the applying, just 2 minutes. And then we're going to go into the personal empowerment.
One of the bootstrap phenomenon, one of these chapters of my book is one of the several amazing things in my life have happened. And it started in a radiation physics lab where we had a really old computer, PDP-7, where you fed it a paper tape to start it up. And it had hundreds of lights on it. And the paper tape was only about a foot long. You know, it maybe had 100 instructions on it. You fed that tape into the system, it would go zzz, then boom, all the lights would start dancing and singing, and you're ready to treat cancer patients. And I was like, wow, that's amazing that this little paper tape with 100 instructions brings this machine to life and allows us not only to treat cancer patients, but do all the mathematics I was doing. That kind of idea is, how can we take a simple instruction set like Scrum and bootstrap into a superpower team? And the first Scrum team was able to do that. They went from being just an average team to being an unbelievably great team, right? So the bootstrap can make you unbelievably great, can make your life unbelievably great.
Oh, I
Wave
love the way
equation.
the background. You got an explosion happen behind you. That was brilliant.
Wave equations, okay? Everything is waves, you know, in relativity and quantum mechanics, we have this particle wave problem. But actually, I think the leading thinkers in physics, the ones that I think are the leading thinkers, everything is waves, and the things we see as particles are the waves colliding that create the illusion of a particle. And why is this important? It's because whenever you're creating something, you're manipulating matter. So you're building a product, and it doesn't matter whether it's a car or a piece of software. The car, you're manipulating metal. Software, you're manipulating digits. the frequency with which you go after that, you're a blacksmith trying to create a sword and using heats things up red hot. And then he has a big hammer and he's pounding it. He's trying to hit it at just the right angle and just the right frequency. And then that forms into a brilliant sword or a horseshoe or whatever. And these things change the course of history. And so we as Scrum people are responsible for not hammering metal unless we work at Tesla. We're mainly manipulating digits, right? And we're doing it on a frequency and a cycle in Scrum, trying to build a great product. So the ability to understand the way frequency affects mass, whether it be metal or electrons, gives you an understanding or a feeling of, when should you want to strike when the iron is hot, right? How do you know this is the moment to strike now? That is what cuts through impediments. Scrum Masters that know how to do that are amazing, right? But they understand the patterns of movement, of frequency, of force, and they know when to move, right? So all these principles are directly related to Scrum. For the relationship between frequency and molecular weight, I spend most of my time now running a healthcare startup, and it's a biophysics lab. And one of the things we can do is take the molecular weight of any substance and using equations from quantum mechanics, we can translate that to a frequency. We can then transmit that frequency, and we have a series of technologies, advanced technologies, that allow us to transmit that frequency remotely. So we can actually transmit a drug to you remotely. And what I'm working on right now is the latest research in anti-aging, reversing age. It turns out there are certain factors that a Nobel laureate discovered that make normal cells go back to stem cells. The factors have a molecular weight. And if you transmit those frequencies to a person, they get younger.
Which you're quite evidenced. You're walking around showing it.
Right. And when you get younger, you have a lot more energy as a Scrum Master to get stuff done, right? So,
yeah.
And
so many
and I
Scrum
think
Masters, at the end of the day, they're so tired and drained.
Right.
But here
that's right.
Saying,
I mean, this is maybe one of the biggest challenges for Scrum Masters, Agile coaches, right? At the end of the day, you're just exhausted dealing with all the problems of people. So one of the things that the Scrum people asked me to do in my healthcare company is come up with a Scrum model for health and performance. So at the end of the day, I have as much as I did in the beginning of the day. And you feel like, where did the day go? I'm still ready to get more stuff done, right? But then you go back and be with your family and you're not falling asleep in front of the TV. You're like there, you're present. You're able to be as energetic at night as you were at breakfast. Wouldn't that be a better life? I call this, I'm writing a new book on this. It's called the TESH model, THES, twice the energy with half the stress. This is the key to not being tired at the end of the day, to give you 4 times the power to get stuff done, right? A lot of people in the Scrum community say, Jeff, you shouldn't talk about twice the work and half the time. People are going to be under stress. The answer is, if you implement the TESH model, where you double the energy and you actually cut the stress in half, you have 4 times the power to get stuff done. Twice the work and half the time is easy. It's like falling off a log, right? So
Yeah, that brings
that's the next book. I'm writing it now.
so that brings us to this right now, the gift of personal empowerment. Right, because it's inside of here. So the Tesh model was born, right?
Right,
and if
right.
all of this was
Well, this is
born.
another thing I've learned doing the Tesh model. You know, as we worked on this, you know, the first principle of the Agile Manifesto is individuals and interactions over process and tools.
Mhm.
It's not about the team, it's about you. It's about your personal power. It's about your insight. It's about your commitment. It's about your focus.
Mhm.
And only when you have a bunch of people that have that with the right interaction where they come together, do you even have a team, right?
Right. And so when people ask us the questions now about, about scaling, what we're really talking about is not just scaling stuff, it's being able to scale people. And if all you're doing is throwing people who are not energized, who are not here, your scaling is going to fail. But if everybody's scaling is being able to have all this personal power, right, and the stress go down, you're ending up being able to do more with less people because there's more energy to make things move. So it's, when I think about this is probably for me one of the most exciting parts is this idea that we are now giving this gift. People are being able to see that this is wrapped up in Scrum. It's actually been here all the time. We're just now giving it, I would say, clearer articulation, kind of like how the Scrum Guide gets updated, right? It's like, let's make it give you clearer articulation to what we're talking about. I think this does it. So when we talk about the neuroscience now, I've always been a big proponent of neuroscience because when I discovered it, it meant as a human, it doesn't matter how old you are, you do have the scientific ability to be better. You can learn new things, you can learn new habits. Your body can shift because your brain can shift. So when you think about that, and I'm going to hand it back to you there, your brain can shift. It's the shifting of the brain that helps people to begin to lower stress because they're now able to think in a different way. They're able to think that they can always win, right? Having techniques to do that. So when this has come to you, because every time you talk about it, you get really excited, right? When you've seen this now in practice and began to see the science behind this, what does it do to you? Explain to people, now that you're seeing that there's so much else here and you'll bring this articulation about Thesh and personal power. Talk to us about that.
Well, I started talking about this more this past year because number one, I was getting into the health and performance area. And why people say, I'm doing Scrum, but why aren't we getting the results that we want? Managers are saying, we did this Agile transformation, but didn't improve things very much. And so you go in and you look at the teams and everything's flat. There's no energy. So I'm saying, well, the Scrum Master knew how to set up the meetings, but if the people have no energy, it doesn't matter, right? It's really all about the neuroscience. So, one of the ones you mentioned in this slide is that if people have a feeling of success, it's like winning a game. There's a dopamine energy release in the brain that makes people feel good and they want to do it again, right? And so
Right.
Scrum Masters, you need to have your teams feeling like that as often as possible. And I mentioned another one, people, when things are not done and people know about it, it causes the brain to automatically try to get things done. So you get free energy. So Scrum Masters, you should be tapping free energy in your team by making it really clear what's not done. And there's about 4 other things that are really important that you can go in and you can just be an observer on a team and you can see, okay, have they checked off the 7 neuroscience factors that build awesome teams, right? And if their team is not performing, they're missing one or more of them. So I'm trying to say today, Scrum Masters, you really need to understand how the brains of your team members work, and you need to use basic neuroscience to actually propel them into a higher performing state.
Yeah, I think that's key, because when I was thinking about one of the things that people are always getting stuck with, right, is the concepts behind scaling. And I was kind of musing, and I thought to myself, well, when we think about scaling, one of the things we've done, let me just put up that slide. One of the things we've done with the Scrum at Scale framework is we're really calling out kind of these 6 key things, right? We're giving direction. And when you think about those, Sun Tzu's is the idea of we want to win. Well, we got to figure out a direction, right? We can't just go around and we don't know what the hell we're doing. And having this clear vision, a vision that we have got that's clear, that we can articulate, and we are acting as leaders. So we are being willing to be accountable. We're willing to make hard decisions, and we're okay with making a quick decision to get that feedback without then, blaming everybody around it. So we're like, we know change is going to happen, but we've got to keep everybody moving, and we've got to be willing to cut through all of that. Leaders who are like this is the leadership empowerment that we've put in Scrum at Scale. So you have leaders who are now leading, and you have teams who have the ability to be teams and do the work. So you then have the ability to have outcomes, and you build a community around this. You've got everybody coming together with all their energy to make this work. It's now a whole organization. And I think sometimes people miss that this is probably one of the big differences with Scrum at Scale, is that Scrum at Scale is talking to the organization from the head to the tail, the whole system, the whole community of the organization, not just a portfolio, not just a project, not just one team. We're talking to the whole organization about coming together, right? And utilizing that unified power. So the organization wins. And when the organization wins, it's the community of people winning as well. It's not just the organization. These are these elements that we are bringing to the table. So it is these concepts that make this work different from anything else that's out there, because we are really saying it's the whole organization, right, together that's doing this. And I see that we have a question from Sly. Sly, you've got a question. Can we take a question now? I think we can. I'm just looking at our timing. So go ahead. Let's view the question.
What about AI and Scrum? I have a presentation on that. Let me show you what happened this week to me. I've been using Chat and Bard for programming. For about 20 years, I stopped programming. I didn't have enough time. But now that with the AI, they can do a lot of the detail work, and I'm programming again. And this past week, I even got JetBrains. I used the JetBrains IDE, and it implemented AI inside the JetBrains IDE. So as I'm programming, AI is actually in the program with me. And I realized that, I was twice as productive with Bard and ChatGPT, but now I'm 3 times as productive with the JetBrains added, because they can see the code, but line by line, tell you exactly what's wrong. And I say, okay, now let's step back. I'm a CEO of a company. Any programmer that is worth their salt today can do 3 times as much as they could last year. That means I'm not going to hire anyone that can't do 3 times as much as they did last year, because the tools are there to do it, right? And also, most of my company is not doing 3 times as much stuff as they were doing last year. So I need to either train them or I need to cut back the size of the company, or I need to do something. This is what CEOs are thinking. So I would argue that the most important thing to Scrum and Scrum Masters today is AI. Now, the beauty is good programmers today are using Copilot. The Copilot will generate 80% of the code, so they can be 5 times as productive. So every developer needs to be using Copilot. And if you're not a software person, you're a marketing person, you need to be using something else, because you can be 5 times as productive in marketing, finance, sales, or whatever. But programming, we have so much data, we can show exactly what happens. Now, if programmers are 5 times as productive as individuals, and we have 5 of those programmers on a Scrum team, is the team more than 5 times as productive? I assert that if we take Scrum and use it as a member of the team, not just to help the individuals, but as a team member to help guide building of the backlog, building the sprint backlog, identify impediments, helping remove impediments, generating products and backlog. I believe that teams today can be 25 times faster if each individual is 5 times faster with Copilot, and as a team, they bring AI into the team as a team member, the synergy will make them 25 times faster. And we have a Scrum trainer who's doing a PhD thesis, and I'm on his advisory board with other professors. And that is his PhD thesis, to prove that. I'm trying to prove that right now in a university. And, a really smart guy is going to spend the next few years trying to prove it, right? So on my team, I have 2 Scrum teams I meet with every day. I'm product owner of both teams, but I also work on the teams. I'm a team member as well. And on both teams, we use AI all the time. I've trained them to use AI all the time. Every meeting is recorded in Otter AI. We have all the stuff in Jira. All of that is dumped into ChatGPT. So Chat can see the whole thing, everything that's going on, every meeting, every story from every sprint. And we get to the end of the sprint, we're having a retrospective. We say, hey, Chat, what do you think? And that gives us a much bigger perspective. And one of the most interesting things that happened is I had been saying the team is not cross-functional enough because they're getting blocked and we could go much faster. And the team, really wouldn't listen until Chat started saying the same thing. But Chat said, you're not only not cross-functional enough, but here is the story that was blocked because Sally was working on these other 2 stories and nobody helped her get this story done. And Joe and Sam could have helped her because they have the skills and they didn't. Once Chat got to that level, the team started to change their behavior. Okay. So you need AI to power up your teams, and you need to move quickly. One of the things that I'm really worried about is the complacency. People don't understand how fast AI is moving. By the end of next year, certainly by the end of 2025, we're going to have a computer that is as smart as a human. They're going to be a real member of the team. You need to get ready for that. And not only that, Scrum needs to be used to train the AI. If you train the AI in waterfall, what are they going to do? They're going to take over that project. They're going to put you under pressure. They're going to make your life miserable. If you train the AI on the Scrum values, what are they going to do? They're going to become a member of the team. They're going to collaborate and they're going to help you. You need to decide what kind of world you're going to be in, because this is moving really fast. And there's a lot of really smart people worried about it, right? And you should be too. Worried enough to actually start to take some action to use AI in your own work, start to building it in, bring it into the team and help do a Scrum and AI team. It's really, really important.
So one of the things when we think about the Grinch, I'm going to bring the Grinch back, is we will find that what people will do is there's the fear factor that comes up, right?
Right.
So people are scared. Well,
Yeah.
what is this? Oh my gosh, I can't. And it's the panic and the scare will come up. So instead of
Right.
people wanting to take on the experimentation idea of, oh, let's play with this, the
Okay.
fear.
Yeah. There's a couple of things that I'm trying to point out to people to put the fear aside, because that's not going to help you. The commander of Star Trek, how far would he get on his mission without talking to his computer? He couldn't even get the ship out of the dock without talking to the computer, right? It's total collaboration. It's only possible with collaboration. That's what people need to see. Now, how does that collaboration work? There's two beautiful examples. A computer became the world chess champion. And a year later, a team of people with AI in their laptops beat the computer. The winning combination is the AI collaboration, both with the individual and with the team as a whole. A few years later, Go is a more complicated game. A computer became the Go world champion. And the whole Go gaming community was totally depressed. You know, it's over, humans are wasted. A year later, a human team with AI in their laptop beat the Go world champion computer. So people, we need to think that way, and not certainly being paralyzed by fear is absolutely the worst. The only thing worse is whining, complaining, and blaming on Twitter.
Mm.
You need to consider, how do you build energy, reduce stress? This is the key to performance. Any fear is going to be stress. You need to put that away. How am I going to build energy around this, reduce the stress? Fastest way to do it is start to learn, right? Start to try things out, try to do experiments. Scrum is built to do experiments. I'd give you an example. My healthcare company, the nurses said, we've got to be HIPAA compliant. That's the security law in the United States. How are we going to do that? And we talked for months about how we're going to get HIPAA compliant. And then I went and I got a list of all the things that needed to be done to be HIPAA compliant. And I put it into chat. And I said, chat, give me a plan to get HIPAA compliant. It gave me the story backlog. I put it in our JIRA. And 1 month later, the company was HIPAA compliant with hardly any extra work. In fact, most of the things I did myself, we had to have a business contract with Google and Dropbox. And so by collaborating with the AI, it makes your life easier to get things done. And that took a big load off the nursing team's shoulders. They've been worried about HIPAA for over 6 months. And then all of a sudden, with a little help from the AI, boom, we're off and running, we're treating patients and not worrying about HIPAA anymore.
So the stocking stuffer that we are giving you is where the world is moving forward with it and the environment is moving forward, join, collaborate, come together with it. Don't fight it, but see that it can be a partner and it can be your next best move or the next best adaptation. We've given you examples of bringing AI into teams. It works. Now, we've got organizations, obviously, that goes back to taking too long to make a decision, that are taking too long to allow it into the organization. So people aren't being able to bring it into everyday work because they're not allowed to go out to these systems. They're not allowed to bring these systems in. There's all the, all the many reasons that organizations are giving to not merge and bring AI in the way that they could. But the organizations who are taking advantage of that, the organizations that are empowering their teams to do whatever they need to do to get the jobs done, are the ones that are making the difference. They're the ones that are leading. Are there maybe two organizations? I mean, you're seeing it with your other organization outside of Scrum Inc. But are there two other organizations that you could mention, Jeff, that are utilizing AI as well and pulling that into the way they're working?
Well, I think there's a tremendous amount of marketing and product management. I mean, AI leverages that hugely in any organization, whether you're making beer or building cars or, I mean, really figure out what to do. I mean, one of the questions, are we going to outsource our thinking? The problem is our thinking in certain areas is too slow. Like right now, if you have to add up and multiply some really big numbers, we outsource that thinking to the calculator, right? I mean, you could still do it, but you take too long and you get really behind. And the same thing is right now is if we have something we need to do and we don't understand everything that we need to understand to do it, you can ask the AI, it has everything that's on the internet about it in its head, and it'll come up in a few seconds with what to do. And you can take a look at that, see if it makes sense, and start executing, rather than spend 6 months like my nursing team did, worried, basically caught in fear and worrying because they didn't know what to do, right? So we need to use the AI as a calculator. Now, you need to learn how to work with the AI. The level of the AI today is like a junior developer. They come into work someday, they're just in a bad mood. You ask them something, they don't want to answer the question. Or they lie to you, they give you the wrong answer. And so you have to keep talking to them like, well, what about this? Or what about that? Have you thought about this? How can you really help instead of causing trouble? That's the way to work with the AI today. It takes a lot of dialogue. So you have to master, like you master working with a junior team member. And so you would never outsource your thinking to a junior team member, right? But you would get them to do whatever work they could do. And one of the challenges we're finding is that the experts are working best with the AI today because they know when the AI is wrong, when they're right, what they should be thinking about. And the junior people are having the most difficult time working with the AI because they don't know the right questions. But on the other side of the issue, the studies are showing, we've got one from Stanford, another big publication is showing that in general, it empowers the junior people more than the experts. The experts are better at trading it, but the junior people actually get a lot smarter working with the AI. And so it kind of levels the playing field, which is really great for Scrum because we like a really level playing field, right? We like everybody to be able to participate as much as possible on an equal level. And the AI helps to level that plane. So in my mind, that should accelerate the Scrum. But you do need the experts there to actually train the AI to do what needs to be done. The junior people can't do that well.
So I know for myself, I've been using it. I've been experimenting with it a lot from a marketing perspective. And with writing, because you can take the idea and now blow it out into 7 or 12, 13 different ways. Think, oh, I like that one best. Yeah, that catches what it was I was feeling. So
Yeah.
it's taking the steps, because it does empower you to be faster. So your stocking stuffer is keep experimenting. The spirit of Scrum is experimentation. It's new, play with it and see what you can find. What's the feedback? You know, don't spend too long just observing. There's always another move. So we're not about just stopping at one point. It's about doing them all and doing them faster. Sly, you had another question. Let me just see what, because that came up. Was there I thought there was another question that came up from Sly there. Maybe it didn't. Okay. Yes, comment. It was a. Oh, so Sly said yes. Could you read it in the chat? Hold on, let me grab that chat, Sly, and see what it was. Chat, could you put? Sorry, you can tell I spend too long with Chat GPT because I just called you Chat. Sly, could you put that into it for me again and just let me let's see that question.
I actually created a chatbot recently that actually works pretty well. I put the next version of Scrum, the Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time, is at the publishers. And almost 50% of it is brand new material. And I put that and then my book on first principles in Scrum. And I tried it out, and it gives really good answers from my point of view. The other chatbots I've seen about Scrum, they give me an answer. I think, I absolutely do not agree with that answer. This is the first one I actually agree with the answers. Be happy to give people a link. You have to have a subscription to ChatGPT to use it. But if you do, we could give you a link to try it out.
Oh yeah, definitely. Would love to do that. So if you make sure, if you'd like to experiment with that, make sure that we have got your email details so that we can share that with you so you can kind of experiment with Scrum even more. Oh, the question was if there'd be more workers, if there's more work, less work for humans, because AI would do most of the work, but we could have more recreational projects. Well, yeah, I think that's great. Because the idea is if we're able to outsource more work to computers, we're able to do more living of life. And there's more things that we can do so we can find how we can affect the world for humans.
When you go back to, when you go back to the computer revolution, when the personal computer was invented, everybody said, oh, the computers are going to take away all the jobs. No, but it turns out they created more jobs. The same thing might happen with AI, but the thing for sure is the AI is going to take away most of the jobs that exist today. So we need to figure out how we get on the wave into the next new way of working, just like we did when they invented the computer chip and gave us the personal computer, right? We had to adopt a new way of thinking, a new way of working. And those that did it quickly, they're all millionaires, right? The guys that worked at Microsoft and Oracle and all those other companies in the early days. The people that jumped on board, they were unbelievably successful, right? They made more millions and billions than anybody had made in history because they saw the future, they got on the surfboard. So that's the message with AI. For sure, the jobs today are not going to be there. They're going to be different jobs. What are they going to be, and how do I get on a surfboard that takes me to that new world?
Right.
You who figure that out are going to have plenty of money.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Lizzy. Thanks, Sandhya, for letting me unmute myself. So I think your perspective was right on point here, because the next question for me was going to be, are we going to outsource our thinking altogether to the AI? Because computers at that level, the personal computer that you mentioned, that essentially was not able to think at our level. We still had a lot of computing that we had to do from our own self. But now with the
You know,
advent of AI,
again, I go
yeah,
back to the Star Trek example. Does the captain of the Star Trek outsource his thinking to the computer?
I haven't watched Star Trek. Sorry, I'll have to check it out. My bad.
You got that
No,
YouTube. But
he uses, you know, I had the good fortune, I've had the good fortune to meet some amazing people in my life. And when Marvin Minsky, who was one of the two godfathers of AI, was alive, I had the good fortune to meet with him at least once a year. And I remember one day he was talking, he said, well, whenever I have a question, I just ask the internet. This is the smartest guy on the planet, in my view at the time. And he just views the internet as a brain extension of his own brain. And he's walking through every life, every day, every hour of every day, asking the internet if he has something that he doesn't know constantly. And that's what this captain of the Star Trek is doing. Anytime he wants, in order to make a decision, he needs to know certain things. If he doesn't know them, he asks the AI,
So
and then he
basically,
puts it all
we
together
become
and he
like,
makes the decision.
I think we could essentially become more effective decision makers, right? Because we'd have more facts presented to us, and
Right.
the things we miss out. Because I think what happens is most of the times when we're making a decision, we're missing out on 95% of the things. We're probably making a decision
Exactly.
on the basis of
Exactly.
only based on the 5% of the facts that we have on the limited knowledge and surroundings that we're exposed to. Right. I think
That's
Lizzie went out.
that is a really, really good point. You know, people are worried about, oh, we shouldn't have AI, but they don't realize their information in their head is only like less than 5% of what is there, right?
Yeah.
And if the AI can bring in that other 95%, you'll make a better decision.
exactly, you just get so much more information. So it's playing, it's experimenting, it's having almost like, I want to say, childlike wonder, because that
Yeah.
curiosity that children have causes them sometimes to bang on things, and and then they tinker around. You've got to be willing to be a tinkerer, because it's in the tinkering that something can emerge. And if we didn't get anything out of that tinker, okay, we put that one to the side. But going back to what we said, if we don't mind this gap, right, and find ways to fill it, to make the next best move for ourselves, the next best move for our organizations, we'll just be the people who are sitting back in the crowd, right, saying, oh, I remember when I heard about that. Yeah, I thought about trying it, but no, do it, try it, bring it to your leaders and say, can we experiment with this stuff? Do some experiments and see what happens. Don't be frightened of tomorrow, right? Embrace it while you're here right now in this now. Don't be frightened of it. Come together with
Well,
it. It's what's happening.
right. I think that we underestimate the power, the personal power we have. One of the most interesting science fiction stories to me was there's a ship, it's an organic intelligence. It's waiting for the pilot. And it's waiting for the pilot because when the pilot drops into the sea, there's a mine sink with the ship. And as soon as that mine sink happens, the ship goes, whoa, it goes to warp. And it's powered by the mind of the pilot. The AI is doing all the work, but the ship can't go anywhere without the spirit of the pilot is the motive force for that ship to move through the galaxies. That, in my view, is the way things actually work, that we are infinite spirits with unlimited power. We've trapped ourselves in our limited way of thinking. We need to widen it.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
I
it.
haven't watched Star Trek or Star Wars, but there is this, I won't say very recent movie. I think that was in 2014 or something. It's called Lucy. So
Yes.
it's, yeah. So,
Yes. Yes.
so
Yeah.
that
Lucy's a good
has the same
example of that.
concept. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Lucy is a
you
very good
think
example.
something like that could happen? Because like after that, essentially when towards the end, she basically installs all of her intelligence into a thumb drive, and they didn't show anything beyond that. So I think at that point, we had probably already discovered something like artificial intelligence at some level, because that idea couldn't have come up from nowhere, right? So like it's like you can't even imagine what the world could be after that. Like, could we be traveling universes? I don't know. Actually, Star Trek could happen. What's going to be up next? I mean, most of the times, there's this dystopian story that we're looking at, that AI is going to be something like Mr. Robot. Have you seen Mr. Robot? Uh, Rami Malek, you know of that?
Mm-mm, I haven't
So
seen those.
basically, so Mr. Robot is a series, four-part series. So basically, what happens is he's a programmer, and what happens is because he's a very good programmer, he gets uh, with some vigilante programmers, and they kind of erase the whole world's data, and it goes back to Stone Age. So basically, everything collapses and things like that. So
Yeah.
what happens is when you have something like AI, which is basically going to be controlling all of the function of the society, essentially, you'll be having banking, computing, healthcare, you name it. You'll be having everything under one database. So basically, there will be just one risk, like one risky decision, and everything could just go boom and bust, and you'll have to start from
Key
scratch.
thing here,
So I
and
think,
this is
Yeah,
one of the things,
yeah,
Brian, is that one of the things we talked about was in what we're proposing is that if we do this collaboration, bringing in the values that are in the Scrum, we wouldn't see the collapsing happen. So it's key to understand there's a value system that we're bringing in, the value system of affecting the world to make things better, the value system of respecting every human. So as I'm making a decision, and I'm making a decision that's rooted in, I want to respect everybody's ability to live, everybody's ability to live well, everybody's ability to think well. So that's the key. There can't be disruption if we have values and our values being unified, right? So one of the things we want to do in everything that we're doing as we're forming teams, as we're looking at organizations, it's the idea of coming together under a value set. If we come together under this value set, that empowers us to think in the same alignment, even though we're thinking different thoughts, right? They're going to the same outcome. So when we're looking at Scrum, we've got a product goal, we've got visions, we've got sprint goals. They're all in alignment with where it is we're wanting to go. Although we're all individuals and we see things differently and we express things differently, we do it in alignment of a united purpose. So that's the key when we're unwrapping this gift. There's a purpose in front of us that we're going towards. Okay. And our purpose is to change the world for the better. Jeff, as we're closing out, because we're a little bit over. So
yeah. I'm looking at my watch because I want to know what's my stress, what's my energy, and I can't get it. It's kind of upside down, but my energy is at 78. It was at 80 when we started, so it's almost the same. And my stress is, still down below 20%. And I'm using this now to assess whatever meetings I'm in. Do I get higher energy and lower stress? If I do, that's a meeting to do more often. For this meeting, it came out very well. I lost no energy. I made stress even went down a little bit, even though I got pretty excited during the meeting. So this has been a great experience for me. I hope it has been for you. Again, I want to emphasize, while there are huge risks in the future for AI, for Scrum Master and so forth, the unlimited potential within us is awesome. And if we can capture it, we can do what was in those books, do what the ballerina does, the prima ballerina. If we capture that inner inspiration and power, we can transcend where we are today and move to a whole new level of performance for ourselves, for our teams, for our organizations. And Scrum is a tool that can really help us do that.
I love that close because that's the truth. I've always thought it's a gift, and I wanted to share this gift with the world around Christmas time, so everybody is aware. And if you look in the chat, we put just a little retro in the chat. So if you could answer that and let us know about today, because we'd love to be able to do more of these things with you, and invite you to do classes with us. So there are links that will be provided and sent out to you about classes that we've got coming up, where we'll have these discussions in deeper form, and you'll see how to really take the Scrum framework and utilize it to make these great things happen for yourself and your organization. So thanks again, Jeff, for this. And we will definitely follow Jeff on social media, please, so you can with this and how he's doing and aim to lower my stress to give myself more power. Right? So if you will give yourself that gift of looking at the things that you can do every day, right, and experimenting with them, run those experiments, and find what is that next best move that you've got to make your today more powerful, so that when the winning comes, you have the energy to go through the whole battle of your day to get to your win. Because if you don't have the energy, you won't be able to get through it. You won't be able to get to your win. You'll peter out just before you hit your win. So find the ways you can experiment with, talk to ChatGPT, talk to different AIs and find out what can I do, right, to keep myself in the battle so I can win and keep my stress down. Thanks again, KnowledgeHut. I want to thank KnowledgeHut, our sponsor, for putting on this event. We really appreciate you bringing us here to this audience and being here with us. Thank you, because we know it's late for your staff where they are. But thank you again. Really appreciate it. And everybody, I hope this was a gift to you as it was a gift to me. Jeff, thank you so much for giving me this time and sharing this time with everybody. And thank you for giving the gift of Scrum to the world. And my hope is that everybody will keep on wrapping this gift even beyond Christmas and find those secret little nuggets that are there to help them have a wonderful life. Everybody take care, and we will see you again soon, hopefully. Have a wonderful Christmas. And if we don't see you before then, have a fabulous New Year. Take care.
Thanks for inviting me. It's great.
Oh, you're welcome. Welcome. This was good. I love doing these things. It's, we always get back to talking about the personal empowerment stuff, because that's where the power really is. If we're changing people are the people inside the organizations, and the organizations change because the people are changing. So this is powerful, absolutely powerful. So I'll get back with you in Slack. And again, KnowledgeHut, thanks so much. Take care.
Yes, so before we get to the end of the session, so here are the course page links. So all you have to just do is click on view schedules, and you will be able to view the schedules based on your time zone and based on your where you are staying. So based on that, you'll be able to enroll to this session. So please don't miss this early bird opportunity. Please enroll to this session, and I will show you the page also. So here it is. You have to just click on view schedules, and based on this, these are the best and standard early bird prices that that you are able to see on the screen now. So do not miss this opportunity. Yeah, and thanks Jeff and Lizzie for the wonderful session. It was very informative. Yeah. And we
You're welcome.
hope to do more such sessions with you. So please visit our KnowledgeHut website, and please get registered to the sessions. Yeah.
Thank you all so very much. Take care. Have a great Christmas.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.